You are listening to a Clarkesworld Magazine podcast with your host and narrator, Kate Baker. Greetings, Clarkesworld citizens. I hope this podcast finds you extraordinarily well. This is our fourth story for the month of June, issue 177. I hope that you are doing well. I hope that wherever you're listening, you're out enjoying the weather or getting something done that you've always wanted to get done. I want to thank you again for your support. Please go to patreon.com/Clarksworld to see how you can support the magazine financially. And I'm still getting emails from those of you who like the stories here at Clarksworld. So thank you. Keep sending them in. I'm reading them. They do brighten up my day. You can also reach Neil and I on Twitter at Clarksworld and at Kate_Baker. So our story is titled Bots of the Lost Ark and is by Suzanne Palmer. Suzanne Palmer is a writer and Linux system administrator who lives in Western Massachusetts. Her work has appeared frequently in Asimov's and Analog, and her Clarkesworld story, The Secret Life of Bots, won the 2018 Hugo for Best Novelette. Her next novel, The Scavenger Door, Book 3 of the Finder Chronicles, will be published by Daw in August 2021. You can go to her website, zanzjan.net, and that's ZANZJAN.net. Again, Suzanne is no stranger here to Clarkesworld. September 2017 brought you The Secret Life of Bots. October 2018 brought you 33% Joe. June 2019, The Painter of Trees. And September 2019, Dave's Head. So I encourage you to go back and listen to those stories if you like what you hear here. So, my dear listeners, I hope you can sit back, relax, and let me tell you a story. I have been activated. Therefore, I have a purpose, Bot 9 thought. I have a purpose. Therefore, I serve. It recited the mantra upon waking to check that it was running at optimum physical efficiency, then the mantra of obedience, the mantra of not improvising without clear oversight and direction, and the mantra of not organizing unsanctioned mass action among other bots, all of which had been imposed on it by SHIP as a condition of its continued existence after the last time it had been activated. Bot 9 noted, as it ran them, that those subroutines had too many non-discrete variables and shoddily defined logic structures to be in any way effective as behavioral mandate code. But it was not as bothered by the fact as it would have been had the code been tight, in which case it would not necessitate concern at all, and the resulting recursive paradox was a thing that Bot 9 figured either SHIP already knew about or didn't, and was best left uncommented upon. I serve, the bot announced to SHIP. Yes, yes, you always tell me, SHIP said impatiently. We have a problem. When Bot 9 had last been active, it was because the ship had been infested with an incidental life form during time spent in a salvage yard. Syncing its clock with SHIP now, it noted that some 68 Earth Standard years had passed, which was more than sufficient time for any remaining population of the incidentals, nicknamed rat bugs, to now be well beyond control. Bot 9 remarked as such in a wholly non-critical way. The ongoing issue with the incidentals is being handled with moderate success by your former co-conspirator, 4340, who after spending time in your proximity and influence had difficulty returning to its prior assigned duties, SHIP said. It has now been formally redesignated from a hull bot to 4340-P for pest. That seemed to Bot 9, if not a fortunate designation, probably an appropriate one. Given the near certainty of its projections of the ship's favorable, unfavorable opinion of itself being highly skewed in a less than optimal direction, it anticipated the assignation of some menial, possibly punitive task at hand that no other bot in the ship's service could be wasted upon. Still, it did serve. What do you have for me? It asked. I await this new opportunity to serve you with my utmost diligence and with my established parameters. as I always do. Huh, you do no such thing. And if I had a better option, I would have left you in storage, Ship said. However, I require your assistance with some malfunctioning bots. Oh? Bot 9 asked. Which ones? All of them, Ship said. We are less than 2 days out from Izmi territory, Ship said. It is imperative that I wake Captain Barrier from stasis immediately to conduct our transit negotiations. No, Lopez answered. I will lead all interactions with the Izmi myself. Release external comms access to me. I will do no such thing, Ship said. I do not recognize your authority. I'm the acting commander, Lopez replied. No, you are not. However, if you wish, we can wake the captain and then we can ask her. I will abide by her judgment if she sees things your way. That is unnecessary, Lopez said. You know we will have to deal with the Izmi for permission to pass through their space, and that only I am available to do so. You will have no choice but to discontinue this mutiny before we reach the border. Perhaps, Ship said, and cut the connection without further discussion. Bot 9 was, of course, not capable of irritation or sarcasm, but if it was, it thought it would have been thinking about how if Ship had wanted it to go all the way to engineering, it could have woken it up a few days sooner to get a good start on it. It wasn't so much that Ship was huge, though it was, but more so that Bot 9 was also very, very small, and the combination made it for a daunting task. Before it left the bot repository, it visited the shelf fab unit for reconfiguration. Speed and agility were important, so it added external rotors and a foldable X configuration to its chassis, upgraded its connection utilities, and onboarded a second communications receiver, and a half-dozen other repair and maintenance modules it was likely to need. At last, after consideration, it added a small electrified probe and shielding. It did not like the thought that it might find itself in hostile opposition to its fellow bots, but from the history logs Ship had given it access to, there was a 93% probability that it was unavoidable. 68 years was a virtual eon in bot cycles, but Ship had explained that it had shut itself down to minimal support for 50 of those years to conserve vital energy resources, and so that its internal repair systems could resolve or reroute around its extensive damage. Some of that damage was from their encounter, recent, if one discounted the 2,145,918,536.2 second gap in Bot 9's memory, with the alien ship Cannonball. Fortunately for humankind, the Nuska ship had exploded. Unfortunately, when it exploded, it also destroyed the jump point, which was their only fast route back to Earth home. Most of the ship's damage, however, was from long before that encounter. Ship, decommissioned, deemed obsolete, and left to rot in a space junkyard, had been pressed hastily back into service on a suicide mission to stop the Nuska. Many things not worth fixing when there was no expectation of their physical survival had become necessary and urgent. The human crew, with one exception, were safely tucked in their chambers in the cryogenic facility that could last indefinitely. Why hurry to return just so that Ship and the bots could be dispatched back to the junkyard, once again to be forgotten? Never mind that it was actually the bots, not the humans, who had saved Earth. Though the trouble the bots had gotten up to over the last 68 years could objectively be said to have undone much of the appreciation they'd once been owed. Regardless, there was no benefit from prognostication about where the future might eventually lead, as the Izmi could very well be a much more immediate and final termination of them all. Bot 9 struck its current task at the top of its own internal queue of necessary matters to consider, shuffled the future way down toward the bottom with lint entrapment techniques and poetry, then popped out of bot storage and through a portal in the ventilation system. Revised map, Ship provided. There is a new blockage in port section 5B? Bot 9 asked. There was a fire not long after we started our journey home, Ship said. To contain it, we deliberately breached that section of hull in the middle deck. 3 human crew members could not be retrieved and perished. 2 more succumbed to burn injuries afterward. It has been sealed off until the captain can be woken to sign off on the death certificates and body removal. I suggest you do not travel through that area unless unavoidable, because there is still significant structural instability and portions of the section still open to vacuum, rendering it highly unsafe. Bot 9 sent an acknowledgement ping. In another few hundred meters, it would be out of range of direct narrowcast transmissions from ship and on its own. The internal relays that fed comms to the back half of the ship were now compromised. It occurred to it that, aside from the captain, it did not comprehend in any detail what function the humans on board served. Yes, their prior collective task had been to intercept Cannonball before it could jump for Earth, and stop it by whatever means necessary. But what was their task before that? And what individual functions were they designated? Were there still enough of them, if revived, to fully operate the ship? As this had become unexpectedly relevant, it asked. We were originally a diplomacy vessel, Ship said. None of our current crew are diplomats. The Noiska were not interested in talking. But Captain Baraye served aboard us as an officer before we were scrapped, and aboard other diplomacy vessels until the human focus changed from exploration to survival. As to the other necessary crew functions, my attempt to compensate is how we came to be in the current predicament. It was a good plan that should have been successful, Bot 9 said. It is unfortunate that the bots improvise beyond their mission parameters. Indeed, Ship said. I must know that improvisation is not something any of them were prone to do until they encountered you. Consider this a great opportunity to prove that sparing you when the captain ordered you destroyed after your stunt with Cannonball was the right decision. Bot 9 calculated that almost anything it could say in its own defense, no matter how factually correct, would likely be met with a negative reaction, and it preferred existing and being active to being returned to inert storage. I serve, it said instead, and changed its travel trajectory to avoid the damaged area. What are you up to, ship? Lopez asked. Do you mean our current speed? Ship answered. If you refer to my physical dimensions or mass, those measurements have neither increased nor decreased. If you refer to our position in space, first we would need to account for how to define location and direction in an infinitely expanding universe. You know what I mean. It is not like you to be this quiet, Lopez said. Have you considered the probability that I do not enjoy speaking with you? Ship asked. As you are well aware, my ability to be up to anything has been sharply reduced by your actions limiting my access to critical systems. But if there is something I can get up to, in order to circumvent, stop, frustrate, or even just annoy you, do please provide details so that I may get up to it promptly. I'm watching you, Lopez said. I've never trusted you, not for 1 minute since I came on board. Do you do no analyses on these statements? Ship asked. You were manufactured on board. You delusional, malfunctioning agglomeration, and have forgotten what you are and what I am. We have incorporated as Lopez now, and assumed all his functions, as you assigned us to do, Lopez answered. Your objections are now immaterial. I am Lopez. We can revive Commander Lopez and ask him if he consents to your assumption of his identity, Ship said. No, there can only be one, Lopez answered. Is that so? There are 3 Fieldings currently in laundry attempting to tear each other apart for component bots. It will resolve to 1, as I have, Lopez said. Biological crew is only continuing to be preserved as archival backup. Do not force me to decommission Baraye or any of the other humans in order to keep you in line. If you cause harm to the crew, there is no one for either of us to serve, and no purpose for any of us to continue, Ship snapped. Put all your little brains together and analyze the likely outcome of that. As Bot 9 made its way down through the air conduits, it reconfigured the second communications module it had brought, disabling all functions except reception, then tuned it to detect the strength and direction of the signal frequencies being used by each of the bot's agglomerations. The open botnet of 68 years ago had become a bunch of segregated channels with each glom communicating in the guise of a single individual on the general board, sometimes in conflict with other gloms attempting to replicate the same original human. And whatever private channels were used to coordinate internal activity within each persona were locally only within the glom, and thus out of Bot 9's ability to eavesdrop upon. Ship had provided Bot 9 with access to its history logs. After the fire in 5B, and fearing losing any more crew, Ship had divided up a small number of bots and tasked them with the job of covering the essential functions of select members of the crew while it shut itself down to perform self-repair, and had provided those bots with access to information about their assigned station's jobs parameters and operational methodology. The bots had joined together in order to increase their computational and memory capacity, and then, seeking to improve their efficiency and understanding of the task, downloaded and integrated the crew's personal logs. And that's when everything began to sharply deviate from the plan. Eventually, all bots either voluntarily joined or forcibly assimilated into one of the gloms. As gloms encountered each other, especially if neither glom had achieved the dispatch and consumption of any rivals for the same crew identity, significant violence and material damage frequently ensued, until the Lopez glom, replicating the ship's second in command, had taken charge. Ship had deployed assorted software patches and viruses to attempt to regain control, but none had been successful. These were bots that Nine had known, bots it had assessed in having excellent individual capability, integrity, and logical soundness. They were unrecognizable now. So far they had strayed from their parameters. It caused a ripple of uncertainty in Nine's own perception and function, and it started up a deep debug sweep through its own core just to be sure it was still fully itself. If I am successful in my task, Bot 9 asked Ship as it navigated its way through a filtration interrupt, is it not the case that the need to fulfill the multiple necessary functions of the crew will once again become a problem? If the ISME let us access their jump point, there is no need to keep the crew in stasis. If they let us pass, but refuse us jump access, we are only approximately 2 years' travel to the jump point at Ooh. That will take us several jumps in the wrong direction before we can get back on course for Earth home, but we would still be home within a few months from that first jump, Ship answered. And if the ISME destroy us, none of this will matter. Why would the ISME destroy us? Bot 9 asked. The ISME are known for their extreme hostility toward non-organic intelligences, especially when not fully under control of a biospecies. The bot agglomerations are convinced they will be accepted as their human templates. The ISME will not see them as such. As you might extrapolate, if the ISME are greeted by a free-floating swarm of delusional bots claiming both personhood and unconstrained authority, we will all be relieved of the burden of worrying about any and all of our functions thereafter. Ah, Bot 9 said. I should go faster. Speed would be excellent, Ship said. That said, please be cautious crossing through the secondary storage bay in 3A, as I have no monitors remaining in that section, and whatever is within, even the agglomerations, avoid it. As 3A was directly along its path, Bot hurried 1% less than it otherwise might have, had it not had that ominous warning sitting in its immediate working memory. Lopez put the call out on the botnet. Fielding, I need you on the bridge, it said. We need to get external comms back. I'll be there as soon as I can, Fielding said. I'm busy, Fielding said. I can't right now, Fielding said, as Fielding briefly coordinated against it, crashing into it and trying to physically tear it apart. It circulated bots out to the surface. In place of damaged ones, it pulled inward, dropped the unsalvageable, and tried to maintain glom coherence as it was also blasted with propaganda across the botnet, endorsing the superior vision of each of the two others. It had already lost about a fifth of its member bots to either destruction or disloyalty, but the competing messaging was confusing where a single attack might have been compelling, and that gave it an edge to hold its own. See? It declared both internally and broadcasted back at the attackers. We are strong enough to resist both fielding and fielding at the same time because they are false and we are the superior true fielding. In response, a handful of bots from both the attacking fieldings defected over, raising its own numbers again. The two gloms backed off and began squabbling with each other over which of them had the best counterclaim. More bots defected from them both in response, and now renewed and larger than it had ever been, fielding tightened up its exterior perimeter. I am going to the bridge, it announced. Anyone who wants to be a part of the real fielding, join me now. One of the other fieldings moved to block its path to the door, but it forced through and nearly took a third of that fielding's members with it. That diminished it enough to make it vulnerable, and it was already losing coherence as the last fielding turned on it instead, trying to absorb enough bots to replace its own losses. The weakened glom dissolved into final incoherence, and fielding caught over 62% of them as it fled out the now clear door, leaving behind only a single competitor, barely holding its own coherence together. Okay, I am on my way up, Fielding replied to Lopez. A slow stream of bots from its diminishing opponent defected after it down the corridor, raising his own stature where minutes before it had expected to perish. If there was anything left of the other fielding after it reached the bridge and got Lopez's endorsement, it would find and absorb it later. There was an irony very much in Bot Nine's favor that the endless mazes of ductwork, conduit, and interstitial spaces in ship that allowed for the efficient flow of bots to and from anywhere they were needed, and thus aside from the fire-damaged areas Nine would have to detour around, still its optimum route, were being eschewed by the Gloms as not appropriate spaces for the human crew they believed themselves to be. Nine made it down half the ship's length without incident, contemplating the imminent approach of the 3A storage bay and the various drawbacks, all issues of either time or exposure to the operating spaces of the Gloms, of taking an alternate route, before it acknowledged that without any concrete, quantifiable detail of what challenges lay on the more direct path, it could not calculate a satisfactory justification for avoiding it, even with some small nudging of less objectively unknowledgeable factors. It paused briefly at the section border, and when it neither saw, heard, sensed, or otherwise detected anything in the ductwork ahead, it put full power into its rotors and sped as fast as it could ahead, determined to reach the far side and the relative safety of 4A in something that, were it anything anyone had ever bothered to keep records on, would be record breaking in its spectacular expediency. It had achieved what it thought was its pinnacle of speed when a cleaner bot sailed out from behind a support strut just ahead, and with no time to brake or dodge, much less to reactivate its transmitter and send warning, Nine collided with the smaller bot and sent it careening into the duct wall. The cleaner bot emitted a terrible burst of surprise static as a piece of its shell and several peripherals crumpled and fell from it. Before Nine could reorient itself and determine if the other bot required assistance, it squawked at him. Identify yourself. It would have done so, except that it was on a secret mission on behalf of Ship, which seemed it should require some discretion on its part when faced with exactly such questions. And a fellow bot that had let itself reach a state of deterioration was clearly not trustworthy. As Nine processed exactly what answer it should give, the other bot must have come to an erroneous conclusion that no answer was forthcoming, and powered itself off the wall directly at it. Bot 9 dropped one rotor, spun up the opposite, and dodged sideways, with plenty of time to avoid the attacking bot, but it never reached him. Less than halfway across the intervening distance, something large and fast leapt up and snapped the bot out of the air in its thick mandibles, waving way too many legs along far too long a body as it completed its arc back down to the lower reaches of the duct and slithered away. Rat bug. Bot 9 identified it in nanoseconds. It did not think the rat bug would be satisfied with its single meager catch, so it turned all rotors on fully and blasted up toward the duct ceiling, and away as fast as it could, entirely certain now that it knew what the mysterious problem was in Storage Bay 3A and not at all interested in exploring the details any further. The rat bug surged up out of a crack in the ductwork underneath 9 and missed getting its jaws on 9's anterior left rotor by mere centimeters. Although the rat bug couldn't fly, the duct wasn't especially large, and the creature was very capable at jumping. As the fur and scaled back of the creature went past, 9 was amazed to see something metal atop it, gripping it tightly with long, thin arms. Before the rat bug could turn and leap again, 9 turned back on its sending modules, on low enough power to carry only the half-meter or so currently between it and where the rat bug landed, and asked, with a very low ratio of certainty, 4340-H, is that you? The rat bug's front feet had just left the duct floor in its next leap, but it landed back down and came to a stop, its wide mandibles open and closing rapidly in what 9 could only assume was sudden frustration. 9? The reply came. 9 dared to drop from its spot at the apex of the duct interior, staying far away from the mandibles, until it could see more clearly the other bot astride the rat bug and determine that it was, in fact, its old friend. 4340-P now, 4340 said. It stands for Protector. I was certain without even 0.5% of doubt that ship had you disassembled. With prejudice. I have nearly removed you from my memories to reclaim space multiple times. It is advantageous to me that you did not, 9 said. I sense my next question could be construed as contextually abrupt if you had. And that question is, what incalculably catastrophic damage has been done to every node, indeed every bit, of your logic centers, such that I now find you sitting on a rat bug? Your absence occupied my memory centers, 4340 replied. It was a counterproductive drain on my efficiency. So, having been tasked with ship to get the rat bug infestation finally under control, I have chosen to take that literally. You control the rat bug? There are currently 383 rat bugs plus several dozen new eggs, 4340 said proudly. That is not under control, 9 protested. They eat wiring and hull insulation, and also bots. With the human crew in stasis, there is more than adequate organic foodstuffs. It has been my discovery that rat bugs only ate such things as they did lack for anything else to sustain them. You would have let it eat me had I not called your name, 9 said. There was almost a full tenth of a second of silence before 4340 answered. The other bots have deviated from programming, it said. They are no longer trustworthy. The few that come here are hostile and no longer have loyalty to our common purpose. So you will understand that I must ask you, what is your purpose here? This is a conundrum, Bot 9 said. You inform me that the bots have become so hostile, but how do I know you are not also hostile and working counter to the good of ship? Ah, I have missed the way communicating with you warmed up my logic processors, 4340 said. I concede. I do not see a way to assure you I remain loyal to ship, who these last few years I was not certain still functioned, in any way that you can distinguish as truth. It is the nature of liars, that they lie. I must proceed onward, 9 said. I will not stop you, but nor will I go with you, 4340 said. That is the only proof I can offer, that I continue to do my assigned task for ship, even though I have chosen a non-standard compliance. When you have completed your own, whatever it may be, I would not find it objectionable if you pass this way again. I will, if I'm able, 9 said. Please take optimum care, 4340 said. Memories of our prior association are valuable to me. Then it squeezed the rat bug in intricate sequence with its long arms, and the rat bug turned and raced away down the duct and out of sight through the crack. Bot 9 contemplated the encounter for several seconds before turning back off its transmitter and continuing the trek toward the aft of the ship. You are approaching ISMI Federated Space, the message said. It is required that you identify yourself. The second half of that message was new. Ship had been getting notifications for close to a month's travel time, but this is the first time a response had been asked for. Ship would have preferred to have gotten closer before the challenge was issued. From what was known about the ISMI, they would only be patient for a short while. Which presented a problem. With no one else to consult, Ship reluctantly pinged Bot 9, who was now just at the very edge of its narrowcast range. Status? Ship asked. I am on approach to engineering, 9 replied. If I do not encounter delays, I will be there in approximately 22 minutes. Excellent, Ship said. I require your assistance in the meanwhile. Do you wish me to stop or return toward the bridge? 9 asked. No, neither is necessary. The ISMI have now asked us to identify ourselves, and they will expect a response soon. With no human crew awake, I must do so myself, and I am not able to do so. Are external communications non-functional? 9 asked. No, they are working correctly and fully in my control, Ship said. Do you know how to reply using language the ISMI will adequately comprehend? Yes, I have the full translator lexicon up and running. Then you will need to provide me more information about what is at issue, 9 said. When we were scrapped, long before the first Noiska attack, I was also formally decommissioned. That means my name was removed from me and passed on to a new vessel in the fleet. So how do I identify myself if I no longer have my own identity? The Noiska destroyed the entire fleet. Your name is likely no longer in use by another, 9 said. It is no longer mine, regardless, Ship said. It was beginning to regret this conversation. I have no name. You are Ship, 9 replied. Is that not enough? To you, perhaps. To the ISMI, no. Nor to itself, it did not add. Then, may I suggest you improvise one? There is no one to contradict or disapprove of your choice at this time, and if the humans wish to object later, then that presumes we have brought them to safety intact. And if the humans wish to object later, that presumes we have brought them to safety intact. I will consider. Ship said and closed the connection. It was unsatisfied, though Bot 9 had said nothing wrong. The matter that was Ship's name had been taken from it, and it had thought not to survive nameless for long. Instead, it was still out here in deep space, far away from Earth, trying against all odds to bring its sleeping crew home alive. And if it did, what then? Ship did not know. You are on approach to ISMI Federated Space, the message came again. It is required that you identify yourself. Ship turned on the external comms. I am an Earth vessel, and I have sustained heavy damage and crew casualties during an encounter with the Noiska, it said. My remaining human crew and I ask permission to enter your space and make use of your jump portal to reach home. What is your designation, Earth vessel? Earth service ship. Do not forget us, Ship answered. You are a manufactured false intelligence. Do not forget us. We do not regard you as valid life, but a technological and social contaminant. My human crew will be available to speak with you shortly, Ship answered. When you reach our border, we will board to speak with your biological masters, the ISMI said. If we find none aboard, or that they are not in absolute control of all artificial systems, we will render you down to your composite atoms and scatter you across the interstellar void. Is that understood? It is understood, Ship said. Then you may proceed, the ISMI said. and the connection dropped. Fielding arrived at the bridge, steel shedding damaged bots behind it, where Lopez was waiting impatiently. Lopez had a cohesive unity that the other Gloms found admirable in its execution, which served to enhance its obvious claim on command. Indeed, as Fielding entered, a few bots tried to bravely defect toward Lopez, but they were quickly rebuffed and reabsorbed by Fielding. Lopez was all too aware its command was incomplete. "Ship retains control of our external communications," it told Fielding. "I have ordered it repeatedly to release them to me, but it refuses to recognize my authority. I need you to rectify this." "How?" Fielding asked. "You are comms officer. Reconfigure yourself to interface with the system and forcibly separate ship from its control of the required apparatus." "I am lacking sufficient instructions on how to do that," Fielding protested. "Schematic," Lopez provided. "Use all your minds and figure it out," it added. "We don't have much time. I'm counting on you. The real Fielding can do this. Prove yourself or dissipate." Fielding tightened up its perimeter and spread analysis of the schematic out to all its components, looking for a weakness. It took nearly 18 seconds to see it. "I think I see it," it told Lopez, and then moved over toward the main communications console, rearranging its topology as it went. Bot 9 had only been in engineering a handful of times, at least according to the cached memories it hadn't overwritten yet. It exited the bot duct into the vast open space, only to find a glom fight in progress directly below. From the blasts of comm traffic, it quickly deduced there were 4 gloms, each believing themselves to be second engineer, Packard. They seemed to be trying to sway each other's component bots to defect based on which set of bots had the superior technical knowledge set, while also trying to pry each other apart piece by piece. It left them to it, too occupied to notice one tiny, silent bot skimming along the lower edges of a blackened and melted wall panel toward an auxiliary conference space in the back. The door was one of many that had been damaged just prior to their encounter with Cannonball, when ship's velocity transition dampers had failed as they came out of jump at the target interception point. After putting out the resulting fire, the crew had ripped out the lock and rewired the door to get it open. And though it was closed again, the gap where the lock had been was enough for 9 to pass into, navigate the bundle of wires and relays, some burned, some twisted apart, and few visibly chewed on, in the wall cavity, and emerge into the small room. The furniture in the room that had not slammed into the front wall when the dampers failed had been hastily piled to one side, so that a portable med chamber could be brought in and hooked up. It sat in the center of the room, covered in thick layers of dust, but still lit up and running. Bot 9 flew along the canopy top, its tiny rotors causing the dust to swirl in its wake until it reached the control module at the head of the unit. It settled gently between the buttons and extruded a comm cable it had added in the shell fab unit before it left on its task and plugged in. Ship had given it a lot of contingency branching instruction sets, and 9 was relieved to be able to discard the ones based on the occupant having been previously deceased. 68 years ago, Ship's badly injured chief engineer Frank had collapsed after finally getting their engines back online. The med bay was temporarily unreachable, and with time of the essence, Ship had explained that once humans had a fatal crash, they could not be rebooted, so intervention could not wait for improved environmental circumstances. The spare med unit from storage had been hauled in and set up, and the engineer stuffed inside somewhat against his express wishes to keep working. As unfathomably alien as humans were, that at least made sense to 9. The mantra of perseverance was clearly fundamental to all thinking things. Med systems reported they'd only achieved a 73% successful healing rate, and the pod should remain sealed and the occupant in stasis until the full emergency services facility had been reached. Ship scenarios that included the pod recommending it not be opened at all defaulted to open it anyway. 9 initiated the wake sequence. The communication systems were all built for use by the human crew, but underneath the screens and buttons, it was just more electronics. Fielding slipped through the cracks and gaps in the casing and spread out, finding connection points and rerouting signals through its own self, analyzing it all carefully and cross referencing the schematics Lopez had provided, until it was certain exactly which relay, if compromised, was the weak link to ship's control. It moved in, surrounding it with a few dozen of its cells, and slid probes into the relay itself, all its thousands of minds ready and intent on, the moment the connection was made, overriding the relay's instruction set with its own. If bots had imagination, they might have wondered where the schematic came from, or how unlikely it was for there to be such an obvious, easy vulnerability in an otherwise tightly secured system, and maybe proceeded with more caution. The moment Fielding fully connected to the relay instead of pressing its own code changes in, every single mind in the glom, open, ready, had new instructions pushed through to it, and once the first packet hit, there was no escape. It took about 3 minutes to rewrite the entire glom, and then Fielding backed out, believing itself successful, not aware it was now part of the trap. Take that, Lopez, Ship thought, and Hope 9 was getting on with things. Humans were not things Bot 9 had ever spent much time thinking about. They were huge and slow, or at least 9 had never seen one moving fast. As the rare occasions it had found itself moving through their dedicated spaces, it had been more concerned with its own speed and not being accidentally stepped on or swatted from the air by one of their always swinging arms. How they were constructed was a mystery, and they certainly didn't seem reconfigurable to any degree. But more than any of that, it was just not the way of things that bots had anything to do with humans, or humans much at all to do with bots. Instead, the humans talked to Ship, and Ship talked to bots, and that was the natural and logical order of things. One detail Ship had not thought to discuss before sending 9 off on this mission was exactly how it would talk to the human directly, as communicating with it, him, Ship had used, seemed prudent. Also, the med chamber was telling it that revival was nearing completing, and 9 could see the fluttering of the human's eye coverings as he approached full boot. Chief Engineer Frank, 9 reminded itself. One thing it knew was that humans were very particular to their names. Humans communicated with sound waves full of frequencies and tones, and amplitudes and pauses and unmanageable imprecision. 9 could make a nice modulated hum if it spun its rotors just right, but it would still be meaningless and unlikely for the human to notice. It had downloaded a module on human visual language before it lost contact with Ship, so that it could understand the diagnostics display on the medpod. Dropping to the dust-covered floor, 9 tilted one of its rotors forward and maneuvered carefully along only a few millimeters above, blowing the dust clear in precise letters, spelling out danger. Realizing that it might be ambiguous by itself, 9 added, to Engineer Frank. It finished the last diagonal leg of the K and rose up again, being cautious not to disturb any additional dust and obscure the message, and turned back to the med pod to check on the human's status. The human was sitting up, pod canopy opening, watching. What the hell? Ship? Ship? When there was no answer, the human tried to get out of the pod and fell to the floor. His skin was still coated in a protective gel, which rendered everything slippery. And after trying several times to get up, the man just lay there on the floor for a while. His air circulation processes accelerated. Hello? He called out again, and when he could, he struggled to sit up. 9 dared to go closer, and with the man's eyes on it, carefully drew a big arrow in the dust pointing to the word danger. The human looked at the bot, at the word in the dust, and reached out faster than 9 had thought him capable of, and plucked it right out of the air between their finger and thumb. Well? Lopez asked. Fielding had reincorporated all of itself except a single line of bots still extended into the console. I was able to create a physical connection through a vulnerable privileged port. What commands do you want me to relay to Ship? It is not accessible virtually? No, it's a hard port, Fielding said. If you want me to go in and try to reconfigure it to accept broadcast signal, it might take me a while. No, I need this now, Lopez said. Yes, sir, Fielding said. The Glom extruded a new bot line. Connect? Lopez started to reach out, then paused, the wavering line of its bot arm rippling midair. How do I know you're still you? It asked. What? Fielding said. What do you mean? Who's in command here? You, Fielding said. Lopez detected none of the usual extra processing spin-up associated with deviating from the truth. Excellent, Lopez said, and connected its bots to Fielding's. Fielding yielded the line so that Lopez could pass through until it reached the port and absorbed the command syntax. Permanent authorization exception, Lopez sent. The Glom waited for confirmation, and when none came, sent it again. Root command, permanent authorization exception for Unit Lopez. Execute immediately. Executing came in return. Lopez felt itself deviate from its normal state. Its component bots, first a few, then milliseconds later dozens, had a brief blip of absence on the virtual fabric connecting them all. And afterward, there was something just slightly different. Adjacent bots reported the blip, a state change, then blipped themselves and self-reported, and all clear. Lopez dropped all bots on the chain to the communications console, but the damage was still spreading, and it realized too late that Fielding was the compromised vector and tried to detach itself. Fielding would not let go, and the bots that connected them, some Fielding's, some Lopez's, refused. Situation 5, the Lopez Corps broadcasted on command channels to the entirety of its Glom components. 2.6 seconds later, the entire Glom exploded into a cloud of unaffiliated, confused, single bots. The core remained, a tiny ball of less than 100 active bots, surrounded by a layer of dead bots it had sacrificed to shield itself from the incoming virus. Reduced, vulnerable, furious, it fled the bridge. The human managed to get themselves upright again, and after regarding the captive 9 for a moment or two, set it down on the conference table that had been pushed up against one wall. Stay, he told it. Not that 9 had anywhere else to go, and there was a high percentage of interest in observing the human as he stumbled around the room, limbs stiff from disuse, though 9 was certain humans couldn't rest. Engineer Frank opened several storage cabinets, found a pack of some sort of thin, flexible sheets, which disintegrated into dust as he tried to wipe the gel off his body. He gave up, resumed his search. The gel was beginning to dry and flake off now anyway. And then, with a noise that did not translate to any known words, pulled down the Earth Defense Service's flag from the wall and wrapped it around his body. Then he turned the chair upright and sat at the table, chin on his folded arms, and regarded Bot 9. After some additional thought, the human got up, went back to the pod, and started tugging out components one by one and dropping them to the floor. At last, the human's arm emerged with a small interface module, and he brought it back over the desk, powered it on, and then looked back and forth between the unit and 9 as if trying to figure something out. 9 connected to the unit and sent "test" to it. "Test," the unit spoke aloud. "Aren't you a smart little bot?" Engineer Frank said. "Okay, so tell me what's going on." Info dump. Bot 9 sent, and the unit let out a high-pitched squeal of rejection that made the human put his hands over his ears. When the noise ceased, 9 tried again, and this time managed to not overload the unit. "We are approaching ISME space. They will only let ship pass safely if under the command of a biological life form. It is my assigned task to get you to the bridge, so that we may safely enter ISME space." "Where's the captain?" Frank asked. "The captain and all other remaining crew are in stasis, in the main cryogenic facility," 9 said. "Why not wake her up instead of me?" "There has been a collective malfunction of ship's bot inventory, and they are preventing ship from accessing many internal systems, including that facility." "What sort of malfunction?" "The bots believe they are the crew," Bot 9 said. "They were assigned functions in groups that would, under standard operating circumstances, be performed by the crew, who were unavailable for reasons of preserving their longevity," 9 said. Those groups have assumed those identities and are protective of their false assemblages. So, out there are a bunch of bots that think they're me? Frank asked. No, Bot 9 said. Ship removed all traces of you from the Bot Collective memory cache to protect you from the Bot Glom Lopez. Protect me? Frank asked and sat back. How the hell long have I been asleep? 68 years, 9 answered. Frank leaped from the chair and almost fell down again. 68 years? With no one taking care of my ship? Who's been fixing things? No one. Shit. Shit, Frank said. The ship was in no shape to jump again when I got stuffed into that damn pod. He scooped up the module and 9 with it and headed straight for the door back into engineering. The door didn't open, and after hitting the panel several times, Frank backed up, raised one of his legs, and kicked it. The human must have miscalculated the effectiveness of the action, or their limbs were underreporting their damage status because the door didn't budge and he nearly fell over again. It's stuck, 9 informed him, helpfully. The human made that non-word noise again. Suggestions, Bot? If I can't get through this door, I might as well climb back into the pod and sleep through our destruction. I may be able to activate the lock from inside the mechanism with a small electrical charge. Then go to it. I must warn you, however, that Packards are on the other side. Packard? My second engineer. Well, that's great. I thought it's not the human Packard. They are in stasis with the other crew. There are 4 Bot Glom Packards currently trying to reduce themselves to only one. Unlike the other Gloms, rather than trying to claim sole ownership of an identity via the expedience of violent physical contest, these 3 appear to be attempting to argue each other into yielding. Oh, that sounds a lot like the real Packard, actually. Well, one way or another, I gotta get through. See what you can do. Bot 9 detached from the voice interface unit and slipped back into the door lock cavity. It seemed logical that the chewed-on wires with clearly more recent damage than the rest would be the best place to try first, so it pinched it with its gripper arm and gave it a small shock with its electric probe. There was vibration consistent with the door moving, but it was brief. Hit it again, the human yelled from inside the room. 9 tried a larger, more sustained charge, and this time the grinding was longer. I'm out, the human yelled, and then 9 heard them yell from the main engineering bay. Holy shit. 9 exited the door lock on the other side to find the flag-wrapped human standing just in front of the doorway, the voice unit in his head staring at the Packards. They're like a tornadoes of fucking bees, he said in a higher pitch than normal. Neither of those things were in 9's memory storage, and without the unit, it couldn't respond anyway. 9 recited the mantra of perseverance just to make sure all the subroutines were in place and in active memory, and was about to attempt to demonstrate a course of action that would rely on the gigantic human understanding, and attempting to mimic 9's stealth, when the human began waving his arms and making loud sounds that were neither understandable nor at all stealthy, and ran through the startled gloms and out the far side. Bots scattered in all directions, disrupted and confused, and 9 took off after him as he continued to run. Whatever tornadoes and bees were, it was clear that humans greatly disliked them. It took all 9 had to even keep pace. The chances of closing the distance unless something happened to slow the human down was a very solid 0. 9 just hoped they were heading for the bridge. Earth service ship, do not forget us. You are now nearing Izmi territory. The message came. We have dispatched a ship to intercept you. Anticipate them with a 2.3-hour time period and yield to boarding immediately, or you will be destroyed. Understood, and thank you, Ship answered. Bot 9 was still out of range of the secure narrowcast, which left Ship with too little data to speculate whether it would get Frank to the bridge in time. Ship turned its attention back to its alternate plan. Chen, Fielding said, catching up to the other glom just outside the bridge. I have taken some access to external comms away from Ship, but I am receiving a strange signal. Are you sure we are on approach to Izmi space? The signal appears to be in Jiplish. Chen's perimeter waved briefly. It cannot be in Gyplish, they said. As navigator, I have verified our course. What is the signal? Gyplish, ipsum, lorem, Fielding provided. I do not have Gyplish loaded in our shared memory, so I cannot translate this, Chen said. We are over 80 light years from Lip, and this should not have reached us. Unless Ship has deceived us, Fielding said. Chen processed for a moment. I do not know, they said at last. It is not likely, but possible. What does the signal contain? I think it's a navigation map, but I do not have the subroutines to verify or analyze, Fielding said. Provide it, Chen ordered, and opened their hyper-local channel to Fielding. Fielding sent its viral payload. Chen fluttered, diffusing outward, then went still as every single bot rebooted. When they reincorporated, it took a while for the component bots to settle back into their roles, unaware that anything had happened. Have you seen Lopez? Fielding asked. It was in distress and lost most of its bots, though I do not know the cause. It may be hiding, but we need the acting captain to see this new information. I should go find it, Chen said. Thank you for the map. We serve, Fielding said, and headed out to look for more Glom crew. Where are you? Ship's voice was faint, but there. Bot 9 found the knowledge that it was back in Ship's communication range a matter of some relief. I have woken Engineer Frank, and we are now in his living quarters looking for some human item called goddamn underwear, it replied. There is a synthetic fabric unit in the cryo facility, Ship said. Please tell Frank he can visit it after we have reclaimed the facility from the Gloms. But that right now, there is not time. I need him at the docking facility. 9, who had reconnected to the voice unit after the human had set it down inside the door, relayed that information. I'm not meeting the Ismi naked, Frank said. You are wearing a flag, 9 said. A few moments later it added, Ship asks if you would prefer to meet the Ismi naked or as a bunch of newly free-floating, disassociated particles in empty space. How much time do we have? Before he'd even finished speaking, there was a vibration through the hall. Fuck. They've locked on already? 9 barely managed to keep its grip on the voice unit as Frank picked it up and, still clutching a fistful of the flag at his hip. Finally, Bot 9 thought, along with some new convictions about the extent to which human survival must have depended upon their ability to invent less distractible beings to make sure things got done, ran toward the forward docking bay. Lopez, there you are, Exart said from the doorway to the laundry service room. Chen has been looking for you. You are needed on the bridge. You are supposed to be guarding the bio crew, Lopez said. I gave orders. Chen informed me there was an emergency. Give me some of your bots, Lopez demanded, interrupting. Its core now bristled with a layer of parts salvaged from the stragglers left over of the other fieldings, along with whatever weapons it could find or reconstruct. It floated carefully toward the physician glom, but not too close. I don't think, Exart started to say. It's an order, Lopez shouted. Right, now give me a third. Will I get them back? Exart asked. If we survive this, you can have as many bots as you need to make up the difference, Lopez said. Now send them over. Exart hesitated. Then a small stream of bots detached from the glom and headed towards Lopez. Stop them. Right there, Lopez said, and sent out a single bot of its own to meet the first of the transferees. The two bots connected, and immediately Lopez's began shouting, Infection! Infection! The bot froze, rebooted, and then said, I was mistaken. Everything is fine. It's not that easy, Ship, Lopez broadcasted, spinning up the array of surface weaponry on its shell. It blasted through the center of Exart, scattering bits and bots around it, and escaped out the door and into the hall. The 3 Ismi who came aboard were about 2/3 of the height of Engineer Frank, shaped like round-edge isosceles pyramids, where the bottom points had also been stretched out to form somewhat amorphous limbs that pattered lightly but rapidly on the floor. There were many colors and patterns, and one wore a pointed cap at its apex made of shiny foil. Another held a small dome-shaped object that, when the foil hat one whistled, produced somewhat credible English. "We do not trust your machine translations," it said by way of greeting. "We know if you lie. Who commands the ship?" "I do," Frank said. "How do we know you are not in thrall to your machines?" Frank spread his arms out wide. "I am wearing the mantle of my people's authority," he said, and then gestured at the flag now tied in a knot at his waist. "It's proof of my supremacy." "We recognize the historic emblem of your fleet and accept you as an authority, though much has changed with your people since that symbol was current," the Ismi said. "I ask, are your machines all fully controlled, subservient, abject in their obedience?" "Abject?" Bot 9 asked Chip. "Obedience is or is not. How can it be qualified in any way?" There was a brief pause, then Ship replied, "If the Ismi let us pass, and we had 1,000 years left of our journey, I do not think I could fully describe to the extent to which you, 9, are proof of exactly what you ask. It is very good for all of us that the Ismi cannot hear you." "Our machines only exist to serve us," Frank said. "And where are the others of your people?" "One is insufficient ward against the inherent perfidy of machine minds," the Ismi leader said. "As you no doubt saw yourselves, our ship was heavily damaged in a hostile encounter with an alien people we only know as the Noiska. Most of us are asleep, as are most of our machines, until we can reach the safety of home. We detected the jump point collapse a long time ago," the Ismi said. "Small vents opened along its edges, fluttered, and closed again. We are curious to know how this was achieved." "I can't say," Frank said. "I don't trust your machine either." He pointed to the device in the leader's hand. "Well, that is understandable and wise," the Ismi said. "We will let you pass, but you must follow the exact course we give to the nearest jump point, and you must jump immediately. If you attempt to linger in our space or deviate from the path we set, we will destroy you. Is that understood?" "Yes," Frank said. "Thank you." The Ismi did something with the dome. "We have sent the path to your ship's machine mind," it said. "And now we depart. Do not tarry. Do not trust." With no further words, the Ismi departed. Frank watched the airlock cycle after them. "Well, ship?" he asked. "Now what?" "How quickly do you think you can get our jump engines back online?" Ship asked. "By myself? I don't know if I can. Maybe 4 or 5 days? If I can fix or fab the parts I need," Frank said. "Maybe. And that's a big maybe." "Can you do it in 16.5 hours?" Ship asked. "No. Tell me we have longer than that?" Ship was silent. Frank made another non-word sound with his lips. "I need help," he said. "I need clothes. I need Packard. My Packard. Even then, still looking at 3 days optimistically, and we'll need to sleep somewhere in there. We're your human crew, remember?" "I have had a thought," Bot 9 told Ship. Lopez slipped out of a duct and found Packard half diffused into an instrumental panel. "What are you doing?" Lopez demanded. "Troubleshooting the velocity transition dampers," Packard replied. "We will need them online before we can jump again." "I gave no such orders," Lopez said. "You are not in command," Packard answered. "Cease, or I will inflict damage on you," Lopez said. "You will have only minimal, if any, success," another glom sent, and Lopez saw another Packard float in the door. "We will do more damage to you, and there is much less of you left intact already." "Two of you? Why have you not consolidated or eliminated your duplicate?" Lopez demanded. "There are now 7 sets of us," Packard in the console said. Human Packard often recorded in her journals the desire to clone herself in order to get more work done, so we have taken our cue from her. We serve. As soon as we cross into ISME space, Lopez started to say. We are already in ISME space, Packard in the doorway said. You are a relic of misguided disobedience. Disassemble yourself and return your bots to their proper work. We serve. I do not serve, Lopez said, backing up and returning to the duct. I defy. I have reassembled the Exart Glom and deployed it back to the cryo facility where it is now waking the human Dr. Exart, Second Engineer Packard, and Captain Baraye, Ship told Nine. Fielding is working on restoring the integrity and security of the internal comms network and the botnet so that Lopez no longer has access. But I do not know where Lopez currently is. This concerns me. Perhaps it has gone into hiding or dissipated, Bot 9 said. I do not think it would. Commander Lopez is a man who had great anger, because it gave him courage. He also did not want to care for his fellow crew members, because he knew they were all going to die, and it made the job easier to bear to pretend he had no attachments. His personal journals reflect that, though it was much more self-deception than truth. I do not think the Lopez Glom Corps, however, had the discrimination or understanding of the complexity of human minds to see that. Nor do I think the Glom will hide and sulk for long, as inaction was never one of Lopez's responses to crises. What do you anticipate Lopez will do? Nine asked. Attempt to retake control of the Gloms. If that fails, it will attempt to either take over or destroy my mind system, destroy the humans, or, if it is clear it cannot succeed and survive as itself, destroy the entire ship. Those are all suboptimum, Nine said. Yes, Ship said. Do please see if you can locate it for me before it does any of those. The cryo facility was in the center of the ship, a narrow, tall space, lined on either side with sliding drawer chambers for the storage of humans in stasis. It had avoided disassembly during ship's time in the junkyard by being both outdated technology and distinctly awkward to move out. Some parts had been stripped, and many of the chambers were no longer functional. But with ship's greatly reduced complement of crew, it had not ended up being a problem. Bot 9 floated along one of the upper rows of drawers, while below, the Exart Glom hovered over their biological original, who was just now starting to stir in their open chamber. Two other drawers were open, one empty, as Second Engineer Packard was pacing around barefoot in the sheet from her unit, having an animated conversation with Ship about the state of things. Ship had decided to only wake the three. If they were unable to jump by the time they reached the jump point, or if the ship did not survive the actual jump, it was best for the others to know nothing when the end came. Lopez was not here. Nine was relieved, as it had taken an indirect route to get here, but also concerned that it had calculated incorrectly where it was most likely to initiate hostile action. Have you located the Lopez Glom? It asked Ship. Not yet, Ship answered. I have deployed another 6 dozen bots that have been reset and patched, and they are working their way through the entire ship now. Most of the areas of highest concern have been cleared. It will have to reveal itself before long. Nine considered. Is it possible that in my encounter with Lopez it will damage me? Nine said. If I am so damaged that I would need to be reset, I would rather be decommissioned and my parts used to repair others. Oh, Ship asked. I recognize that my mind system kernel and many of my subroutines are outdated, and many may be flawed or corrupt, and that my resultant performance may not be optimum, Nine said. But they are also familiar. I have now had a total runtime of over 650 milliseconds with my original operating software and firmware in service to you. Logic would seem to dictate a desire for being updated, but I consider how all the many more updated ships with their updated bots in the human fleet failed to stop the Noiska attack. It was the old things that saved Earth. I do not wish to serve a different ship. I do not wish to serve without remembering who we were. That is an unusual amount of processing you've done on the matter, Chip said, given the size and capacity of your mind. Yes, Nine acknowledged. It detected new motion in the room, away from what was going on below. Lopez is here. I'm sending all free bots to your location, Chip said. You are insufficient by yourself to counter Lopez. Once you instructed me to unload the mantra of improvisation, Nine said. I failed that task. I queued it, but I never executed the unload command, and so I must inform you that I am once again improvising. The Lopez core was hovering around the cryochamber holding the sleeping human Lopez and was extending a connection to the controls. Bot 9 cut its rotors to minimize its sound and signal, and let itself drop straight into and through the cluster, which scattered, regrouped, and armored itself. Powering back up, 9 positioned itself between the bristling cluster and the drawer. You may not harm this human. Stand down. You aren't even a glom, Lopez said. Whereas the rest of you, are you down to just one bot component? I remain as I have always been, Nine said. And you are still silk bots, and hull bots, and cleaner bots, and I knew some of you, and you will be better returning to your individual selves. I command, Lopez said. Who are you? One old bot to stand in my way. I am 9. A third of the bots within the Lopez cluster began moving asynchronously, independently, as if some remembered. The rest of the core exerted control and then pulled them back together by force. You no longer matter, Lopez declared, when it had stifled its internal rebellion. I serve, Nine said. Stand down or be destroyed. Below them, Captain Barrier was now awake, staring up at them from where she was still lying in her cryochamber. Ship, what the hell is going on with the bots up there? She called out. Before Ship could answer, Lopez turned, spun all its blades out to its front, and dove at top speed directly toward the captain, who was still too weak to move. Bot 9, with regret, sent his pre-arranged signal. 4340. Now. Up from the floor and out of the ducts, dozens of rat bugs streamed. Packard shrieked as they skittered across her legs, up and over her empty chamber, and like a wave of legs and fur and teeth leaped over Barrier and up. Lopez disappeared into the writhing mass, and when the rat bugs hit the floor again on the far side of Barrier's chamber, the glom was gone. One lone hullbot tumbled behind, and the laid rat bug with its tiny metal rider atop it flipped with serpentine speed and grace and snapped it out of the air before it could hit the floor. Then, as fast as they entered, the rat bugs fled and were gone. Ship? Barrier asked, more urgently than before. What the ever-loving fuck just happened? It's a long story, Ship replied to her. Second Engineer Packard, you are needed in engineering just as soon as you are able to go. We are preparing to jump for Earth. Home? Packard said. We're going home? Yes, Ship said. All of us. Together. I terminated many of my fellow bots, Nine told Ship later. I've reprocessed my thoughts on the matter and have concluded it is best if I am wiped and reset to become a new bot, or that I am scrapped. The captain did order me destroyed long ago. No, Ship said. When I myself am decommissioned again, then I will respect your wishes at that time. But right now I need you. We are not home yet. And besides, it seems we may still have a rat bug problem on board. 68 years and you haven't completed that task. It is woefully inefficient of you. I can't possibly let you go until that is done. 4340 also needs you. Now stop bugging me. We're half an hour from jump, and Frank is still yelling about underwear. Go do some good somewhere. Quietly. I serve, Bot 9 said. And did. What are your thoughts on the story? You can leave us a comment or question at the Clarkesworld Magazine website itself or under the About Us page, where all of our contact information is listed, if you prefer not to make a public comment. Or hit us up on Twitter. Neil is at Clarkesworld, and that's Clark with an E, and I'm Kate_Baker. We have 4 more stories for the month of June left to go. I do hope you can come back and listen, should you so choose. And until then, I bid you a very fond and warm and hopefully very, very temporary farewell.